Welcome to Implausible Nature, your home for all things Black Templar. On today's video, we are going to be talking about something a little more esoteric. Competitive versus casual. What does it mean to be competitive? And what does it mean to be casual? And are the two mutually exclusive or not? Bob, why don't you start us off?
All right. So, for those that do not know me, I've been running Implausible Nature since, God, it's been 10 years. Well more than that. Started with a website, and it was very early 5th edition that it was came about, right? I've always been a competitive gamer. Everything I do in life in general is in a competitive nature, and it's gotten to me where I've been in life and being successful. And I play games ultimately to win. I do not play games to crush the soul out of my opponent. I want to have fun with my opponent. My goal when I play games is to have an opponent that is equally skilled or learning to be that to push me. I want a challenge. So, to give you an example, Alex constantly is telling me, custodies are broken. Tower broken. They just need to be
They are.
trashed. All
Well,
these things.
yeah, I don't like those armies anyway, from a lore perspective. So when they're really, really good or borderline broken, I sometimes have to vent about it.
And that's okay. I get it. I understand. But for me personally, I love the challenge. For me, it's how can I make my army better? How can I adapt to beat them on our own 2 feet without having to deal with nerfs? That is something that I love. And for people that have played like video games like Dark Souls, super hard game, right? And that's the fun of it, right? You want to have that challenge that's near impossible, the first few times as you've played that game. And then when you beat it, you're like, oh, yes. Those are the games that I like to play. I love having a game that I'm playing with that I put the best army on the battlefield that I possibly can come up with, and I have someone else that did the same thing in their opinion, and we just crush each other until the last very moment. And it's that last move that I do, a devout push onto that objective, and I win by 3 points. That is the best game possible. Now, that's my background. So, all the advice that I give you guys is through those lenses. Now, I give advice on units because I am good at deciphering what's efficient and what is not. Now, in 5th edition, I got a bad reputation because I used our codex rules to build armies that were good. And I kind of dubbed them the Gunline Templars. And I won. And I won a lot. And I was probably, I'm not going to toot my horn, but I was probably the best Black Templars player in the world in 5th edition because I won tournaments regularly with
Yeah,
Gunline Templars. That's why
I
the
remember those days.
popularity of Implausible Nature grew so huge because eventually I got a following and they saw the light, right? So that's where kind of this came from. And but the problem was when you're looking on the outside in, those that have a certain headcanon of what the Black Templars are and what they should be and how they should be fielded saw that army and they were like, nope, you're just a win at any cost, that
I
type
gave
of
you grief
thing.
about it.
And we're going to
Guilty.
get to
I
that, Alex.
guilty as charged. I gave you grief about it for sure.
Guilty. But, I want to win. I love the Black Templars. I love everything about them. And I'm going to use all the rules that Games Workshop has given me to try and win with them, right? But you touched on it. It doesn't mean it has to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Now, when you're having a list and you're building a list, right? There is obvious better choices in the codex than others, right? But Games Workshop not going to put them in the book unless they are part of the lore, right? In fifth edition, when I was building my gun line Templars, everyone was like, no, that's not what Templars do. They are always about close combat, blah, 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 blah. You look
The
in the
last
lore,
class squads,
yeah, I ran Lance
they
squads,
were efficient.
Razorbacks,
Yeah,
I ran land
but you could also get
speeders.
last class on the Razorbacks.
Yep. I did Terminators with tank hunters and missile launchers and cyclone missile launchers. It was fun. I was, I was, it was really good. But you look in the lore, and it talks about how the Black Templars don't like it, but they use them.
Yeah.
And
There's a
there's big groups
whirlwind
about it.
listed. We even though we couldn't run one in fourth and fifth edition, there's a whirlwind listed on one of the crusades in the back of the book
Yep.
as part of the thing. So
But conveniently, some of those things were kind of blocked out by the headcanon players.
yeah,
Now, there's nothing wrong with being uh, a person who loves to play, more quote unquote lore friendly lists or more casual in using different units. Do not get me wrong, but I want to clarify something. When you're going to a game with a person, whether it be a pickup game or you're bringing yourself to a tournament, you have to expect that the other person also wants to win. Unless you're just throwing down with a friend, beer and pretzels, and you have someone, let's say you're bringing regular Crusader squads and 16-man sizes, and you have Land Raider Crusaders all over the place, and things that are not necessarily optimal, but they're cool because we have stratagems to let us do some of those cool things with them. Unless you're playing someone that's like-minded like that, bringing less than efficient units, you're probably not going to win. Now, and that can be okay if you're still having fun, but you can't expect and get angry by doing that. Now, a competitive gamer, there is a bad perception about competitive gamers. Competitive gamers pretty much, I would say it was a little bit more prevalent in 5th edition when the last, renaissance of competitive tournament play kind of really kind of took off. Nova Open, Adepticon, some of those bigger ones, War Games Con.
yeah,
Those were like the really big ones that a ton of people started going to and were really huge, right? There was players that would just crush, mime, you know, drive the women, the lamentation of your women, some Conan. But anyway, they were out there. But nowadays, we've grown up. We're middle aged now. Let's be honest. Most of these competitive players have been playing for 10 years. We've grown. We are no longer those people. You can find one here there that cheat, and they get called out online real quick. You all
yeah,
know them. But most of us, we want our fellow player to have fun. We want to have fun. And most of us that are even in a tournament scene, I'm talking with my opponent after the game. What did they do? What did I do? How could I do something better if they beat me?
yeah,
It's that conversation between people. That's how you learn. You play the games. You have to make mistakes. You have to lose. Winning is not as good of a teacher as losing is. Uh, but we're not bad guys as competitive players. And I feel like the casual player on the outside looking in sees that we just are just wanting to just crush people. So we have Alex here. I'm going to turn it over to Alex because he was that person. And I kind of want to
yeah,
give him his perspective on it now.
yeah. So I entered 40K in fourth edition, and I was that guy packing Land Raider Crusaders. I would run 2 Land Raider Crusaders in a list. I even had a list with 3 Land Raider Crusaders, which was a really tilt list. I didn't run it very often, but I did routinely run at least one in every single list. It's usually full of Crusaders, sometimes Terminators. I'd have in a second one. Um, and I ran what I thought was cool and fluffy. And, there were some games when I played against similar types of folks at pickup games that I do well at. There was one of my friends from high school, uh, very competitive guy. Um, he played Space Wolves, and he always brought the best list like possible. Very similar to Bob, where he would optimize his list based on what was good and efficient in the codex. And I'll be honest, I don't think I ever won a game against him. I think I tied him once. Um, and despite the fact that it was really frustrating to lose all the time, and at the time I was just like, I don't understand why. Maybe I'm just not good at this game. I didn't really know what my issue was. We were good friends, but even though I hated his lists, I had so much fun playing against him. We had such a every one of our games was always we're laughing, we're joking, having a good time, even as he's smoking me with his Thunderwolf Cav. Um, so I I think that some of the and I don't think I ever really thought this, but because of my interaction with my friend, uh, I think that a lot of people who are maybe more casual or lore friendly players looking in at the competitive gamers are thinking, oh, they're the whack gamer. If you know not familiar with that term, WAAC, win at all costs, is what it stands for, and it's really thrown around a lot. And honestly, if you're a hardcore competitive player, that does not make you a whack player. If you build the most optimized list, that does not make you a whack player. Whack players are cheaters, people who will do anything to win at all costs, right? Those are people who cheat. And if you have to cheat at little plastic army men, I mean, you're just that's just sad, right? So I don't care if there's money at stake or whatnot. We're playing a war game with miniatures here. It's supposed to be fun for everyone, and I think there's very few of those people out there. Fortunately, and the competitive scene has gotten a lot better. If you guys watched our interview with Tom, which you can see here, um, he even touches on that. He talks about how it used to be super super cutthroat, but it's not like that anymore. And they're even the top players are playing by intent. Like he talked about, he was playing against I think a Drukari player, and the Drukari player deployed something with or moved something with the idea that he wouldn't be able to see him. And once it was said and done, it turns out he could see him, and he's like, "Well, I can see that actually. Do you want to move it?" And he let him move the unit in his shooting phase. So because he wouldn't have put it there if he hadn't been able to be shot, right? So um, that kind of sportsmanship is getting a lot more prevalent, even at top tables now, which is great. Um, so I think the hopefully the perspective will shift for casual players. And like you said, I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. So my background when I got back into because I kind of quit 40K. I was still collecting models here and there, but I kind of quit 40K sixth, seventh. I don't know, that time period blurs together for me because it was horrific. Um,
Yes.
uh, so I really stopped playing. I played maybe I don't know less than 10 games between those both of those editions because it was not fun. So when I got back into eighth edition and started playing a lot, I found a new group of folks that I was playing with, and these guys are. This is my current play group that I play with. These guys are all really super cool, super fun to play against, but they bring tough lists, and I was struggling. And so I started talking to Bob, and hey, well, what can I do? And Bob would give me advice on lists, and well, these are the things that are competitive, and there were some lines that like I didn't want to cross, because of lore, and I knew that I was partially handicapping myself, by not taking 3 units of scouts when they were troops. Um, So instead, I'd take one, maybe two, and in cursors, um, and I sort of slowly got over this mentality of that it is in the book, right? And I get that we're Space Marines and then Black Templars supplement, right? So, but the only thing that we can't take is librarians. And we got into this mentality, and I think it happened in fourth edition, to be honest, fourth or fifth edition, mainly fifth. This this mentality that guns are bad, we're only melee, right? And that's really not the case. Even in the fourth edition book, they talk about the holy bolter and how most initiates are armed with the holy bolter. Guns aren't uh, guns in 40k. Running ranged weapons in 40k as a Templar is not necessarily something that is bad. Yes, do we prefer to kill our opponent in close combat? Sure, but are we gonna like be frothing idiots charging towards them? No, not no. And the reason why the bolt pistol and chainsword thing became so prevalent that it's either bolt pistol and chainsword or go home is because in fifth edition they were each considered a close combat weapon, which meant that if you had two close combat weapons, you had an extra attack. So you had one base and you got an extra one for charging because everybody got an extra one for charging back then. And then you got a third attack because you had two close combat weapons. Um, so that's why, because we wanted as many attacks as possible, because we got things like free rerolls to hit from one of our vows, things like that. And so we wanted as many attacks as possible, which we still do,
Yep.
right? For things like Gene Rot Might and Psalm of the Remorseless Persecution and stuff like that. But it's no longer, to me, necessarily just that, that's the only way to run Templars. Right? That's not the only lore friendly way to do it. Um, Really, there's uh, you've got to have some shooting. If you want to win games, you've got to have some shooting. You can't be pure melee. I don't think there's a single army in the game that can be pure melee and win tournaments. Now, maybe you're not trying to win tournaments, and that's fine. But like me, I'm playing beer and pretzels games with my friends, but I still want to win, and I still want to do well, and I do like a challenge. Um, but uh, I wanna have a chance to win, right? And so that's sort of actually where this channel came about. Bob has had the website for years, but we decided to start doing YouTube videos for you guys to sort of help players that were like me at the time, wanting to get better and be more competitive, even if you know I it meant setting aside some of my favorite units like Land Raider Crusaders just because they're not worth it. So it looks really cool on my shelf behind me, right? Because it's nicely painted along with my Storm Eagle. Don't buy one of those. It's torture putting it together. It's a beautiful model. Torture putting it together. Save yourself. So, I think it's they're not mutually exclusive, especially now. Primaris Crusader squads are really good. They're probably the best troop unit in Space Marine Codex. Um, and something that like I thought about, and I really thought about this when we were in 8th edition, when incursors were like, you're taking incursors, those are your troops, because they're fantastic. And infiltrators were too expensive for what they did. And I was like, well, they're like sneaky Phobos guys. We're not really sneaky. And I was like, well, how would I, if I were a Templar, how would I justify that, right? Well, I mean, you don't have to be sneaky if there's no one around left alive to see you, right? So these guys are the spear tip. These guys are
Yep.
the ones that go in and uh, you know clear the way for the rest of the crusade to to come in unopposed from the outside, the outer edges of the enemy, right?
Yep.
Of course, incursors aren't that great right now, but that's okay. They're still cool models, and infiltrators are
Yep.
pretty good.
And really, it comes down to, yes, Games Workshop has this great lore foundation for, in the Codex and the Black Library for all these armies that it's out there. But ultimately, it's your army.
Yeah,
Build off of it, splinter your forces off. Maybe your crusade is, off in La La Land doing this different thing that's not mentioned. And you have autonomy to do what you want with your list that still fulfills the fluff of your army.
yeah,
And the great thing about the last probably like 5-6 years is we're getting a absolute ton of Space Marine models that are brand new, uh, specifically Primaris, but they're tricked out. I remember when they came out with, I believe it was Dark Imperium, and everyone was looking, or maybe it was Indominus, I don't remember, whatever, which one of those. And it was the Blade Guard veteran, and everyone's like, they're Black Templars!
yeah. Indominus. Yeah,
Indominus, and it's
yeah,
like, this is made for the Codex
yeah,
is coming. Oh my gosh, they made them exactly for the Black Templars, and there was so much excitement, and really it comes down to is what you want to do with it. Even if you're building a tricked out list, it can still be the most amazing fluffy army you've ever seen. I've seen some of these painters that are, especially in like our Discord, that like paint these armies and they're just absolutely beautiful.
yeah.
Like for I'll comment another YouTube channel. Everyone pretty much knows him. Last Light Creative. He does a
Yep.
ton of green stuff conversions on all of his models, and these things are so full of character. You can have the most competitive, efficient list in imagination, and your army will look the theme.
Yeah.
Maybe grimdark, maybe you like the clean. It just you can
However
do it
you
if
want to
you
run
put,
it.
yeah.
And the thing is like you wanna make sure, like, obviously, if you want to run Land Raider Crusaders, that's fine.
Hmm.
Just know that your opponent might be practicing for a tournament. So if you're running a list that's not, optimal, or a little less optimal than maybe, and you're running units that are not very good right now because either they cost too much or they just don't have the same battlefield role that they used to. Um, just know that ahead of time, and either find an opponent who is doing something similar, or just be prepared that if you're facing off against that guy who's practicing for the tournament next month, he's bringing his top A game with his most optimized list because he wants to win that tournament.
Yep.
So, make sure that he knows that you've brought a casual list. Make sure that he knows that he's okay with that too, because you got to also think about it from his perspective. If he's practicing for a tournament, he probably wants, you know, someone to challenge him, right? He wants you to bring your A game.
Yep.
And uh, Also, the other thing to think about from his perspective is, if you bring a list that is not, going to be the best options that you can take, and he smokes you, you might not, maybe you had fun because you don't care, and that's fine. But think about it from his perspective. If it's one-sided games can be not fun on either
Yep.
side. If you are just absolutely smoking someone, that's not necessarily feel good either, right? So
Yep.
that's just something to keep in mind. But I think that you can absolutely be running a really good, really competitive list and have it be 100% lore friendly and fluffy and whatnot. I don't think. I think obviously people throw the terms around casual and competitive a lot. But what makes a competitive player isn't necessarily, that they're just, regardless of anything else, they're out there to win and that's all they care about. Because that's not true. They want to have fun too, and they are playing that army for a reason. Maybe that reason is it's really good. That's a valid reason.
Yep.
Maybe the reason is like us. We love Black Templars. It'd be really easy. I know Bob likes to go to a lot of tournaments. I'm not as much of a tournament goer. Um, for me, mostly it's uh, I feel comfortable enough. It's been long enough since my days of when I was bringing subpar units and struggling to win games. Um, I know what I need to do, what I need to do in a game and in a list to win games. Um, Getting that last second devout push or whatever, the strength of conviction. I've won multiple games with both of those strats, by the way. So it's uh, it's one of those things that with that, uh, I don't think that I think I would have a lot of fun at a tournament. My main reason that I don't go is one, they take up a lot of time, and I've got family obligations and things like that, but they're also really exhausting. Really exhausting. Playing
Yep.
40K all day long is tiring.
Yep.
So,
And you have to
Bob could
play
easily,
fast.
you have to play fast. That's the other thing. Bob could very easily pick up Tau and go win tournaments if that's all he cared about. But he cares about playing Black Templars and winning with Black Templars, right? So, whatever your reason for wanting to be more competitive, um, it doesn't matter. It's just important to note that everybody should be able to have fun, whether
Yep.
you all you play is casual games, which 40K has a really great system. If you want to run Land Raider Crusaders and fluffy stuff that isn't competitive, 40K has Crusade.
Yeah. Use them.
Crusade is a really cool thing. Now, the thing about Crusade is because it's meant to be super like lore driven and what was that term that GWC knew? Forge the narrative, right? Because you want to forge the narrative with it. Crusade, you want to play Crusade with like-minded people that are just want to tell a cool story, right? Because Crusade has a lot more leniency and rules, and stuff can get really bonkers good really fast and out of control, right? So you just got to be aware of that, and if everybody's got stuff that's bonkers good and out of control, fine, cool, that's
Yep.
whatever, right? Tell a good story. So Crusade has a lot of flexibility if that's what you want to do, and you don't want, you're not interested in what the absolute most competitive choices are.
Yeah. And again, just to kind of sum it up, I mean, it's still okay, to take your list that you have that you've built and lovingly collected over the years, and to go to your game store and play against that Custodes player. As long as everyone is still on the same page, obviously that Custodes player, you know, may not have a finely tuned list, and it may be more balanced. Just because they're playing Custodes doesn't mean that they're tournament tuned, or Drakari. You can play a lot of thematic and good lists, but even if they are, honestly, you can do some of those games and give yourself a challenge in that. You're like, okay, now we kind of exist and kind of built our brand, and I've built the brand kind of on helping Black Templar players, especially, make purchases that are wise for the rule set that we're currently in, so that you don't waste money. I don't want anyone to lose obsessively consistently based off of just choices. So, I give advice based on that. Hey, this is what is the most optimal. Take the advice or leave it, but that's your choices. That's what I would recommend. And using the XYZ units together will give you a good solid base for your list. And then you can build around that however you desire. And that'll give you a good shot at winning most games, against the board. And obviously there's units or armies out there that are pretty good, like Custodes, Tau right now, Drukari, Admech, have been pretty good. Now we have
Pretty good.
tools for those.
Just pretty good.
Like the Drukari and the Admech, we have tools to deal with now. But
Yeah, they're not
in
nearly as bad.
general, it's you can't get around that because your opponents can want to play the army they feel like they want to play as well. There are tournament players that do switch armies based on what's the current trend and most powerful, and you're going to get that. But ultimately, it comes down to really they want to have a good game too. They want to have fun. They want to win just like you do, and you can't really get upset with them if they are bringing a competitive list because ultimately you can build a competitive list too. That's what we're here to help people do. And
Yep.
people build competitive lists in their own way, and it's okay to lose. I've lost a lot of games in my history. I still lose games. I'm probably never going to win an LVO, but I reasonably could say that I could probably go like a 7-1, 6-2 easily enough with, you know, at a super major. Um, but these guys, that play every day, multiple games. I just can't compete with that. These channels like Art of War, but I still give advice. I still know what's going good, and knowing those basics for yourself doesn't mean that you're not casual, that you're not a fluffy player, that you're
Yeah.
becoming something else. So that's just my 2 cents on the deal.
Yeah, exactly. I think you touched on something there. Just because you're building the most optimal list that you can doesn't mean that you don't care about, the lore, right?
So just because you're bringing your list to a game and you're facing someone that's bringing like Drakari or something like that, that's oh man, it's gonna be a tough matchup. I'm not liking this. I'm angry. Don't count yourself out. Take it as a challenge, a learning experience, because you never know how those dice might roll.
Yep. That's the funny thing about playing a dice game is you can math out all the best units and the best strategies and have the best game plan, and sometimes you roll four ones.
Yep.
So, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Maybe you need, if your dice are rolling that badly, maybe you need to take one of them and melt it down in front of the others as an example of what happens when you fail. So, so yeah, so this is a longer video, guys. Appreciate you sticking with us. That's sort of our thoughts on the competitive versus casual mindset, and you know what whether you can be both. And what it means to be competitive. So let us know down in the comments. What do you guys think? Are you casual? Are you a competitive player? Are you both? Are you, try to bring, do you try to bring the best list that you can? Um, do you field some units that are not optimal because you just love the unit? Let us know down in the comments what you guys think and how you guys feel about that. So also check out our Discord. Really great place to get tactic advice. A lot of great players on there that can help you out. We have a lot of new players as well. So if you're a veteran Black Templar player, and come on and join us and help those new players and build that great community. We also have a Patreon. We want to thank all of our patrons. You guys really help us out. We love making these videos, so that helps us continue to be able to do that. So if you want to join our Patreon, there's a link down below as well, and we really appreciate it. So that's all for today. Until next time, keep on crusading.